Alright, what's up guys? I've got a video here today. It's going to be my reaction to how difficult is raiding in Lost Ark Part 1 and Part 2 by Saint1. Check out his channel, give him a like, subscribe. So let's jump into this right now.
Hey everybody, today I'm breaking down what an endgame encounter is like in Lost Ark Korea currently. The fight we're looking at is the 5th gateway of the Legion Commander Albershut's raid. This weekly raid is split into 6 different boss encounters.
So most likely at launch, this content won't be available. I think this is current in Korea right now. And at the time of him making this, I think it was the highest level raid available.
With checkpoints to stop and save the lockout after completing the 2nd and 4th boss encounters. You can reform and pick up where you left off with the same party members or switch it up with replacements if they're also at the same checkpoint. Loot's also received at each checkpoint in equal proportions, so if you complete Phase 2, you'll earn 33% of the potential materials for crafting the new set. Phase 4 nets you 66% and Phase 6 gets you 100%. Gateway 5 pits you against the Queen of Nightmares herself, Albershut. He has 23 billion HP in this encounter, evenly split into 200 individual lines of HP. This helps us more easily identify when certain gimmick mechanics will occur at. He has a total of 31 different patterns that can be used in any random order between major HP thresholds, but we'll just be covering the major gimmicks though to keep this video concise. At 180 lines of health.
Okay, I can't tell how many players are in this raid. It looks like at least
The first major gimmick happens. All 8 players are given a black or white shape. There are 4 shapes, so 2 people will get the same shape, 1 in black and 1 in white. At periodic intervals, shapes will be summoned while you're DPSing Albershut that will float across the screen. You must collect a certain number of shapes depending on which shape you were assigned at the start of the mechanic. Circles have to collect 2, squares have to collect 4, hexagons 6, and star 8. If you collect the wrong color shape, it's considered -1. There will also be patterns that are needles that travel across the screen.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like it's at least 7 or 8.
We're traveling in a straight line. That if you're hit by it, it's a 50% chance it's either a black or a white shape. So it could help or set you back. The other mechanic are long line telegraphs across the entire map that if you're hit, do the same thing as a needle. There's 2 variations of that. One that also summons a needle, which travels in the same direction at a high speed. You have to lower Albershut to 140 lines of health while collecting the correct number of shapes for every player. It's common to have the correct number of stacks of your shape, only to get screwed over by the last summoning of shapes, needles, and line telegraphs on around 145 lines. If any of the 8 players has an incorrect number of stacks...
Okay, so it's an 8-man raid.
When entering the 140 line gimmick, it's a guaranteed raid wipe and you have to start over. At 140 lines, Albershut either has a circle or a cross shape underneath her. This helps us determine where we need to stack with the other player to safely place the symbol on the ground for the next pattern. Before we stack, we have to dodge line laser telegraphs twice, with the second one giving us about a second afterwards to converge with the other player. If done successful, all 4 players will place a symbol in 4 sections of the map evenly spaced from each other. Albershut proceeds to shift the map, and one of the 8 players has to guide a certain shaped meteor into the corresponding symbol placed in the previous mechanic. Failing to do that wipes the raid. While doing...
Oh my gosh, this is kind of crazy looking.
This, players have to dodge a lot of large AoE telegraphs, the red scary ones that are one-shots. The expanding black hole also has to be avoided, and if it touches another one of the symbols, then it wipes the raid, which is why they have to be placed equidistant apart from one another. If everyone's successful at placing all 4 meteors, then you proceed to the next phase, which is a burn from 140 lines to 110 lines. At 110 lines, Albershut pours to the center and a short intermission plays. 2 large spheres are summoned into the map, and there's also glyphs on the ground which light up that tell us what to do in this mechanic. They indicate the order in which the 3 major targets have to be neutralized with fatigue damage.
I haven't done raiding in WoW since basically Wrath of the Lich King, but I don't remember anything being anywhere near this complicated.
Damage from our spells. Being out of order wipes the raid, and taking too long also wipes the raid. At the same time, illusions of Albershut can spawn in up to 6 positions, 3 above and 3 below. It's random. Every illusion that gets summoned has to be countered within a second of it appearing. Failing to do so silences the entire party, which screws up the neutralization, and also the illusion blows up and does like 50% of your health. If all the illusions are successfully countered and the 3 main targets are neutralized in the correct order, then you move on to the next phase. The next phase, the 2 orbs that were just neutralized create portals that lead to a different cube mini-boss in a separate area. To pass the gimmick, one player has to collect 12 white orb buffs in the right portal, and then in the left side portal, 4 players have to collect 3 gold orbs each. The 12 white orb player is probably going to have to be a support because the white orbs inflict a DOT, a stacking damage over time debuff on you as you collect each orb. At least one player has to stay outside to deal with Albershut, or else she immediately casts a raid wipe if there's no one in the area with her. Not collecting the right number of orbs
Holy shit, I think everything, it's like 5 or 6 different mechanics so far that just are automatic raid wipes.
also incurs a raid wipe in the next gimmick. And also the player that stays outside fighting her dies, she also kills the raid. During the battle with the cubes, there's also needles and line telegraphs that can reduce the number of orbs you've collected. Needles drop you to 0 stacks in the left one, and in the right side room, line telegraphs reduce the amount of stacks you've got by 1. Once the cubes are defeated, you gotta exit within like 2 or 3 seconds or else it kills you. After all players have exited, Albershut begins the next pattern, which reminds a lot of people of Frieza from Dragon Ball Z. She'll summon a huge ball of energy, and you have to break an HP shield on her. Afterwards, lines of light protrudes from 8 different positions. You have to maneuver into the lines of light to avoid being silenced, as there's a neutralization check that has to be cleared. You also have to remember where each of these lines of light are, because at the end of this pattern, after the neutralization check has been succeeded, 5 different safe spots emerge, only one of which is correct to stand in. The safe one is the one that if you remember where all the lines of light emerged from Albershut in the previous pattern, it'll form that shape.
Oh my
If players
gosh.
successfully neutralize the boss, stand in the correct safe spot, and have the correct amount of orb buffs on 5 players, they'll survive the raid wipe that follows afterwards. After lowering the boss from 110 lines to 90 lines, players are once again assigned shapes from, well, it's the same thing as the 180 line gimmick. You have to once again collect the correct amount of shapes by the time you reach 50 lines, while also avoiding a lot more dangerous patterns.
Oh, you have to
that
grab
begin to
the right
emerge around
shape?
point.
This is
At 50
insane.
lines, you have to once again converge with the other player that has the same shape as you to place the symbols on the ground, but instead of line telegraphs, everyone has to kite 4 meteor drops.
I wonder if you can get in-game gear from PvPing, or like if there's PvP gear, because I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have the time or the patience to try and do this to like fully gear out a character.
You have about 1 second after the last meteor drop to stand within proximity of the corresponding shape to place the symbol. Hopefully at this point everyone has survived and was able to place their symbol to prevent the last 8-player gimmick. As after you successfully guide these meteors into the correct symbol, it's a burn of the last 50 lines to 0 HP against a torrent of even more deadly attacks. If you've managed to claim victory at this point though, pat yourself on the back, because that was the door phase and the easy part. She takes the battle up in space, and the real battle against the
that's the easy
real
part?
boss begins at that point.
Holy shit. This is crazy. Okay, let's check out part 2. Already got it pulled up here.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of how difficult is raiding in Lost Ark. This time we're dissecting the finale against the space opera phantom Albershut. As a disclaimer, if you're trying to face this boss in the future blind, you should stop watching this video as it contains fight spoilers. Otherwise, this is kind of like a guide, but a really terrible one. The video is just meant for entertainment for people to hear about
that
mechanics
last
aren't
part
obvious
you
by just
don't,
watching the
I'm
gameplay.
assuming was
By the
just
time of
phase 1,
recording,
so you
this is
don't
the
get
highest
any
level
drops or
encounter in
any
Lost
loot
Ark, and the
from
most
that.
mechanically complex fight
That's
to date.
insane.
Phase 6 is a 20 to 25 minute endurance battle against 28.5 billion HP split across 250 health bars. If you made the DPS check in the previous fight in phase 5, your damage is sufficient to clear to phase 6 since there's more damage uptime and a longer fight timer. The reward for clearing phase 6 isn't unique, but you're guaranteed 2 legendary engraving books, additional ancient fragments for crafting, and a small chance of looting the highly coveted Esther Stone. Clearing this battle is not necessary for anything
And
in
like
particular,
light
but
speed.
there are achievements linked to it. You can progress your gear fine by opting to skip this fight and just clearing the earlier fights in the raid for materials. Besides for 27 unique attacks, some of which are strengthened after the second half of the fight begins, there are 4 major gimmicks that can be tricky to resolve, 2 which will repeat, and a final desperation attack at 1 HP that's mostly for theatrics. The first major gimmick appears at 225 lines of health. All raiders induce a hallucination and are isolated from the rest of the group, while a shape appears throughout their screen. Memorize this shape, since it'll be important in a moment. A demon spawns in the center tile, checking orbs which reduce your movement speed if you're hit by them, but we can cheese this by standing in a narrow blind spot
Holy
behind
shit,
it.
this is like that
Afterwards, 2 rows
meme
or columns of the map
with
grid will
the
start to light up, and
like
you must navigate to a
calculus and
spot that isn't lit.
trigonometry in
This
your
is repeated
head.
3 times. While this is happening, you'll occasionally be afflicted with a debuff which flips your controls, symbolized by a purple swirling ball above your head, making your character move in the opposite direction of where you click. This debuff will turn on and off a few times during this. If you're struck by one of the lit up grid spaces, you'll be killed. After 3 of these, everyone is released from the hallucination and Albershut teleports to the center. They'll start releasing the same orbs from before, which reduced movement speed. By hitting her and standing close by, a shape will appear near her. The one player that saw this shape in the hallucination must guide the other 7 players to the safe grid spots, as Abroshed will repeat the attack again in the same order that they saw it before. Once this is resolved, players can fight again normally, but the next gimmick appears very shortly. Several tornadoes travel across the map, dealing heavy damage to anyone they touch. A few players have a deep.
I was not expecting this level of complexity for group raids from an isometric ARPG. Like I was looking at this game like Diablo 2 or Path of Exile. This is crazy.
Debuff that can be removed if a tornado touches them, but it's important that they don't remove it. If the player still has the debuff and it naturally expires, they're sent to another plane where there's a single black orb. They have a few seconds to destroy it. Should they fail, they're spit back out to join their party, and the orb blows up into a swirling vortex, greatly impeding movement and either pushing or pulling players away gradually. This lasts for a very long time and makes DPSing the boss very difficult, so destroying the orb is important. The more players that lose their debuff by getting hit by a tornado, the more difficult it'll be to break the orb. DPS continues until 188 lines of health. At 188 lines of health, the fight officially begins. Abroshed teleports to the center and a brief intermission plays. Meteors are summoned in and each of the players is marked sequentially 1 second apart from one another. The raid map is split into a 3x3 grid. Each grid space has 3 HP. When a blue meteor lands on any of the spaces, it reduces the tile's HP by 1. A player marked by a golden meteor reduces the HP of the tile it lands on by 3, as well as...
Yo, what the fuck? How would you figure this out with on your own? Like with a group of 7 other people, how would you figure all this stuff out? This must take, I don't know how frequently you can do these raids, but this must take a lot of time and effort, coordination to figure out all these mechanics.
all adjacent tiles by 3 as well. The first player during this mechanic is marked with the golden meteor, while the other 7 are marked with blue ones. The raid must carefully place these meteors in such a way that no more than 3 tiles are destroyed at any given time. When a 4th tile is destroyed, Abroshed will immediately perform a raid wipe. Finally, tiles regenerate back into play with full HP 1 minute
Basically, if you fuck up, it's a raid wipe.
and 40 seconds after being destroyed. When a tile is destroyed, it also means the map is shrunk as well. Like the 1st Legion General Vultan, players are instantly killed if they're hit by a stagger, knockback, or knockdown while standing near the edge of the map. You can fall off the map by getting knocked off, but fortunately the game doesn't let you just walk off. After resolving this mechanic, blue meteors will begin to fall on random party members every 1 minute, while
I'm trying to look at their like party composition to get an idea of kind of what classes will be good in raiding, and it basically looks like there's 2 of the gun lancers and a bunch of, there's probably like 1 or 2 ranged support characters. I forget which class it is. Everyone else looks like they're ranged DPS.
golden meteors will select a random party member at specific HP intervals, the next which happens at 137 lines. After 188 lines though, the boss becomes considerably more dangerous. Our moveset is expanded to include several heavy knockback attacks that are designed to smack players off the map. These are the yellow telegraph attacks. No matter how geared you are, if your reflexes are slow here, you'll face a death by gravity. It's important to understand what super armor options you have in a pinch. You also have to avoid tanking yellow telegraphs as much as possible, since every time you're hit by one, you'll gain an infinite duration debuff, which at 3 stacks will cause a blue meteor to begin dropping on you. After dealing with the golden meteor, you have to survive for 1 minute and 40 seconds for the destroyed tiles to respawn before entering the 113 line pattern. This is because you'll want the full map space for what comes next. At 113 lines, a new intermission plays.
예정된 운명의 최후에
Players navigate to the center and position to dodge a quick pizza attack and then divide themselves to different parts of the map to avoid the giant palm slam in the center. A black hole forms that gradually pulls players towards it, and a huge number of red orbs begin flying in from outside of the map towards the center. We can use Esther Shandy here, which is kind of like a party ultimate or a limit break if you're coming from Final Fantasy XIV, to slow down time and assist with dodging these. The red orbs deal heavy damage and inflict a debuff on the player if they get hit by it. At 3 stacks of this debuff, the player dies. At the same time, gold orbs will fly in as well. All players have to collect 2 of these in order to survive the explosion at the end. There will also be 4 smaller black hole orbs on 4 of the tiles. 4 players have to each enter one of them right before the pattern ends to avoid getting...
Oh my gosh. I wonder, I'm getting like stressed out just watching this.
Getting sucked into the center and pulled into another dimension. You have to time this carefully, as entering the orb too early won't protect you from getting pulled in. If performed successfully, 4 players get pulled into the center and sent to a separate plane on the same map, while the 4 that entered the small black orb stay in the original plane with Albershut. 8 phantoms of Albershut appear in the original plane, and the 4 players outside must run close to each of them. If any of the clones turn clockwise or counterclockwise, you've got to notify the team on the inside where that clone is, usually with a ping. This lets them know that the clone will appear on their side shortly at that position. The clone that turns clockwise will appear on the other side and must be neutralized within 2 seconds, while a clone that turns counterclockwise must be countered. When the clone is dealt with properly, it drops a golden buff that gives the player in the inner dimension a shield that lets him survive the explosion at the end. Of the 8 clones, 2 will turn, and this repeats in a second wave for a total of 4 clones and 4 shields when dealt with properly, allowing all 4 players inside to survive. If a clone isn't properly countered or neutralized, not only is a player guaranteed to die since they won't have a shield, the clone also drops a blue meteor on the tile that they were on, potentially destroying it, which can kill players on the outside as they won't be able to see the meteor itself. The entire mechanic takes place on 2 versions of the same map, and so quick communication and cooperation is needed for everyone to survive this. From this point onwards, most of Albershut's random attacks have been strengthened and have additional mechanics that you'll have to deal with. The next gold meteor appears at 87 lines. At 66 lines, tornadoes will appear again, and the debuff players once again have to destroy the orb to prevent the vortex from spawning. A spawn vortex is especially deadly at this stage of the fight, where Albershut has her expanded strengthened moveset. There's one final golden meteor at 37 lines. After you deal with it and reach 28 lines, the dream world pattern repeats, and you must once again memorize the shape and the safe spots to navigate to. As part of the map is destroyed at this point, it can be tricky to navigate from one side to the other, but if you manage to prevail at this point, you're on the home stretch. At 25 lines, Albershut will destroy the 4 corners of the map. She'll no longer kill the entire raid if more than 3 tiles are broken. However, as blue meteors are still spawning, the map will gradually get smaller until only the center tile remains. The goal is to bring her down to 7 lines of health before this happens.
Oh my gosh. This... I don't know how doable this is gonna be. I mean, like, in Korea, I feel like they have a lot more coordination and willingness to like work together on a team. I just don't know if this is how doable this is gonna be in North America.
As the smaller the map is, the more likely people are to get knocked off. At 7 lines of health, the final major gimmick begins. In an act of desperation, Albershut will begin to summon one last giant meteor designed to wipe out the party.
영원히 삼켜지리라.
This bitch has some crazy ass powers though.
During its slow descent, you had to break through a 22.8 billion HP overshield that she gains, or 200 additional lines of health before the meteor lands in 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh my god, she just got another 200 lines of health? I thought she was almost dead. So it's like resetting your DPS to the start of the fight, basically. It's like a full heal.
You're tight on DPS on this point, and you were getting close to the 20-minute enrage timer. 5 minutes are added, so you don't have to worry so much about it. And any of the broken tiles, besides for the corner ones, are brought back into play right away. 200 more lines is ridiculous, though, and the following mechanic is designed to help you punch through that shield. While battling
Oh, okay, so there's a mechanic to get through the shield.
Albershut and chipping away the shield, the screen will flash at the 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 11 o'clock positions. This signifies that a counterable meteor will be flying in towards the center of the map. This will happen 5 times, once in each direction, and 1 more time in one random direction. When the meteors arrive, they'll either flash red or blue. Blue ones have to be countered, while red ones have to be ignored altogether. If a red one is countered, it'll explode, dealing heavy AoE damage to players and likely knocking them off the map. When a blue
Oh, that's pretty legit. It just fell off the edge.
meteor is successfully countered, though, the player receives a buff that when expires, fires a long-range laser that'll deal about 14 lines of damage to Albershut's health. In total, 5 rounds of meteors will appear, of which at least 15 will be counterable, and 14 is practically required to meet the damage check. Have people in each of the quadrants with excess players prepared to assist in case 2 blue meteors appear in one quadrant. If you fail to break the shield, the final meteor lands, killing everyone. But if you succeed, then buffs will scatter across the map. Players only need to pick up 1, which will grant them a shield that lets them survive the meteor. 5 Finally, bring Abrashit down to 1 HP and the last gimmick occurs. An orb spawns at the 7 o'clock position, which she summons in order to wipe out the remaining players. The orb has to be destroyed with normal damage before she can. However, it regenerates 40 million HP per second. As you hit the orb, buffs will pop out of it, which when collected greatly increase your damage output, stacking up to 9 times. Pick up as many orbs as you can and then nuke her last attack faster than it can regenerate, bringing an end to the fight once and for all. Please stop watching here if you want to avoid story cinematic spoilers. And that's it. While there will be raids in the future that are tougher, Abrashit's raid is definitely the most visually stunning. Sometimes
There's gonna be harder raids in the future? Are you kidding?
in 2022, we'll also have to deal with this encounter on Hell mode, which has equalized gear, tighter DPS checks, additional mechanics, and a prestige achievement for
There's a harder mode?
completing both this encounter as well as the previous one from the other video back to back with no restarts and not a single death across the entire party. I look forward to showing you all that encounter whenever it comes.
오늘을 기억하라. 필면자여.
Good grief. This game might be too hard for North America. I'm not so sure, guys. It's like maybe the top 1% of players will be able to do that in North America.
곧 절망의 밤이 도래할 것이니.
So it looks like that's the end of the video. I think the rest is just cinematics. So yeah, I'm getting a little excited for this game and for Elden Ring. I just got my PS5 yesterday, so once Elden Ring comes out, I'll probably be playing that on PS5. I'm definitely going to check out Lost Ark when it launches, since it comes out a few weeks before Elden Ring. And once Elden Ring's out, I'll definitely be checking that out. So that's kind of what I've got planned for right now, coming down the pipe. Probably some Lost Ark videos once that comes out in a couple weeks here, and then some Elden Ring videos when that comes out after that. So let me know what games you guys are looking forward to in the comments. If there's anything you're excited about that I haven't, maybe has flown under my radar, I'd be interested to know and check it out. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching. And remember to give them the D.